This is my second video in English pronunciation. We'll start with a quick recap of what I said in the first video. Have a look at these word combinations, if you like, or words, and try to pronounce them correctly in English. So the first combination is Albert Hall, stress on the second element. Why? Because this is a place name, and we said that with compounds that are place names, we usually stress the second element, as in Boston Harbor or London Bridge. The same goes for bestseller and crown jewels. Both are stressed on the second element, as is commonly the case with well, what we call lexicalized items, items that you can find in dictionaries. So now for something new, how do you pronounce these place names? There are lots of place names in English that end in the syllable or the suffix, if you like, ham. But you don't pronounce this ham, you usually just pronounce it So it's not Birmingham, but Birmingham. It's Chatham, Dagenham, Nottingham, Oldham. So it's just Similar considerations hold for Oxford, Bedford, Stratford, where the ford, which refers, of course, to crossing a river. It's a place where in the old days, where there were no bridges, you crossed the river, a ford in German, Ford, but this is just pronounced as fud here. So Oxford, Bedford, Stratford. Then there is Bournemouth. Again, you just pronounce a schwa here, an sound, rather than mouth. So Bournemouth, Plymouth, Sidmouth. And then you have the names of English counties, which often end, or most of them, I think, all of them end in shire, which in itself would be pronounced shire, of course, but in these place names, in combination with the names of towns, for instance, this is pronounced sh. So we have Oxfordshire, Nottinghamshire. Remember that ham is just pronounced so Nottinghamshire. Cambridge is on the river Cam, so it's Cambridge but Cam. The German capital is pronounced Berlin in English, but there's also a town in New Hampshire which is pronounced or stressed Berlin, but the German town is usually pronounced Berlin. There are a number of other cities or towns here that are difficult to pronounce, such as Caracas, Canberra, capital of Australia, Chicago, not Chicago, Chicago, Edinburgh, Inverness, stress on the last syllable, and Aberdeen. Okay, let's look at a few adjectives or past participles that end in ed. So, for instance, an alleged crime, ein angebliches Verbrechen, a marked increase. So in these cases, we have the same pronunciation as with the normal participle, as in that we use for the past tense and the present perfect. So we would also say he has alleged that. So we also say an alleged crime usually. But there are a few words that are exceptions to this rule, such as dogged, for instance, dogged unwillingness, something like verbissen in German, learned, as in a learned word, Bildungssprache. Of course, the past participle is pronounced learned. He learned something. or even he learnt something with a T, and also spelt with a T in that case. But in this case, with the meaning gebildet, Sprache, Bildungswort, gebildetes Wort, we say learned. Blessed, the Blessed Virgin Mary, for instance, gesegnet, but of course the past participle would be pronounced bless. I blessed him, ich segnete ihn. Crooked, a crooked politician, for instance, corrupt politician. Naked and ragged, zerklüftet, ragged mountains, for instance. So here we have a few exceptions, and the same applies to adverbs derived from adjectives like alleged and marked. These are pronounced allegedly and markedly. So if the main stress falls on the syllable that precedes the ed-ly ending, we say idly. Allegedly, markedly, confessedly, deservedly, supposedly, fixedly, advisedly. But with different stress, astonishedly, determinedly. Feature of English pronunciation that's quite difficult is the suffix ate, ate, which occurs both in verbs and in adjectives and nouns, and that's why it may lead to difficulties for some of you. Now, in verbs, it's quite straightforward. You always pronounce it ate. So you say create, conflate, vibrate, dictate, narrate, relate, legitimate. But when legitimate turns into an adjective, you use ut. So you say legitimate, appropriate, compassionate, separate. And again, the same goes for nouns ending in ate. You would say climate, senate, prelate, magistrate. Magistrate can also be pronounced magistrate, by the way. There are exceptions, as usual. The adjectives innate, sedate, ornate are stressed on the final syllable, and yes, well, they're pronounced ate. Then there are also a number of nouns, especially Latinate nouns, nouns derived from Latin, that are pronounced differently. Chemical substances, for instance, nitrate, carbonate, gluconate, and legal terminology, probate, for instance. I'd like to conclude this little presentation with two recommendations, two websites that come in useful when you're looking for the pronunciation of a particularly difficult word, or if you just want to have an entire text pronounced for you. If you want to have an entire text pronounced for you, you can turn to the first tool here, which is called TTSMP. So this is a text to speech and text to MP3. It's not just, as it says here, for US English, not just for American English. You can also turn it to British English, various accents in American English. So it's quite a useful tool when you're preparing a presentation, for instance, and you want to have it read to you by a native speaker who represents your favorite variety of English. The second tool is called Youglish, where you can simply type in a word. You type a word into the search box here. I've typed in Odysseus, a word that may give trouble to some speakers, non-native speakers that is, but even to native speakers occasionally these words pose problems. So you type them into Youglish, and this will give you a number of hits on YouTube, and then you can immediately watch the YouTube video, and this will tell you how people actually pronounce the word, native speakers that is, how they actually pronounce the word Odysseus.